Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading, and you are tuned into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash, where we take a look at what's happening in our economy and what effect that may have on you, on me, and all of us, and actually even on Chris, my co-host, who's going to pop in here in about 2 seconds. There he is.
Hey
Still
there.
looking very patriotic and very good, Chris. Nice to see you.
Likewise, yeah, thank you.
And you're still up north enjoying yourself in the cooler temperatures, which is very wise this time of year here in the greater Phoenix area.
Yeah.
All right, let's get after it here. We're going to talk about this coming from Watcher.guru. India and Russia begin de-dollarization to hit $100 billion trade target. This is becoming a very common thing anymore where, number one, the term de-dollarization and when Russia's involved with the term de-dollarization, it's pretty much a default opinion that it's antagonistic. That's the main
Yeah.
reason they're doing it, albeit there are fundamental reasons. Number one, not no longer having U.S. dollar dependence.
Hmm.
Number two, as they de-dollarize these various countries, what they're finding is it's been a boom to their local currencies in terms of strengthening them. So there's been a lot of good that comes out of it, but again, it speaks to with each and every time, in our podcast we did prior to this one, we looked at and talked about how aggressively China is basically de-dollarizing themselves by, getting into gold and dumping U.S. dollars. Now you take again what's going on here with BRICS, and the poor dollar is getting it on from all angles. And
Yeah.
an agreement like this and this is just Russia and India
Hmm.
to do $100 billion in trade this year. Or is it's by 2030, I think it is. Is that right?
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
I think it's by 2030.
By
But
2030 is their goal. Yeah.
but at the end of the day, who's to say we're not going to be reading another headline like this 6 months from now, where they're saying they're going to add another 100 billion to it? So
Right.
it's like a fire that continues to grow, if you will. I know it's the wrong time of year to use that analogy. It's a sore
Yeah.
subject, but bottom line is, I mean, this is not good news.
Right. And most of the trade being done between Russia and India right now are done in their own currencies. That's the rupee and the ruble. And so they've already, I think it's funny that they say they're beginning de-dollarization because between those two nations, they've pretty much already eliminated it, at least for trade. So it's already happening, and it's not going to be an overnight thing, obviously. But I think we are going to be, talking. I don't know how many years it is from now. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe five, maybe 10. That
Right.
the U.S. dollar is just no longer as dominant. It's already not as dominant as it once was, but we may be a minor player at some point here, and they're doing it. Yes, I think with Russia, some of that is a little bit of the kind of ongoing feud between superpowers, right? But really, they want to avoid sanctions, exchange rate volatility between our currencies, and so they're trying to completely bypass our payment systems. Russia's been already working on its own, as we've talked about in other shows before too, with BRICS working on their own payment systems to be able to do transactions across local borders and completely bypass the dollar. So none of this is necessarily new, but it just shows that this is a continuing focus of theirs. And de-dollarization, that word is not going to go away. And it makes sense for them. They already trade so much energy, oil and other commodities between each other. If they can cut the dollar out, do it in their own currencies, make themselves less vulnerable to what is happening with the dollar weakening over time. Why wouldn't they do it? We would have to give them a very strong incentive to stay on board the U.S. dollar plan. And I don't think imposing sanctions and locking them away from their money is going to help that become a reality.
No, for sure. Well, and if you look at, for those of you who are watching this podcast, the picture CC, our producer, has up, Putin, India and Russia look like they're very friendly right now. I mean, they
Yep.
look very comfortable with each other. And as I
Yeah.
mentioned a moment ago, this is probably one of many other news releases in terms of the amount of integration, financial integration that these nations are going to do. And this is, again, this is India and Russia. There are other
Yeah.
nations that would be thrown into the mix here and have been thrown into the mix as well. So for our next article here, um, talking about de-dollarization, what's happening in the U.S. economy, U.S. fiscal debt explodes to 1.4 trillion in the first 9 months of fiscal year 2026, according to this Congressional Budget Office, the CBO.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing. I was having a conversation with Billy. Chris knows Billy, he's a guy we work with. And, we hear our entire life, we heard, first, it used to be when you and I were younger, Chris,
Hmm.
millions was a lot of money. To become a
Yeah.
millionaire was like, you've made it. And then we
Yep.
morphed into, this word billionaire, for millions to billions. And then
Not you
now
and I
we're
personally,
correct,
unfortunately.
correct. And now we're into we hear trillions thrown
Trillions.
around, I would say, like, relatively casually.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, it's a very common term, to hear the word trillion. So this is what Billy was sharing with me. I want to get in for our listeners. I want to give you some perspective on this. So So let's start with millions. A million seconds, Chris. Do you know how long
Mhm.
that is in days?
No, no idea.
You want to guess? You want me to just tell you?
Tell me. Yeah, just tell me. I'll look stupid. Even dumber.
What well, you're supposed to say more dumb, not dumber, but one
See?
million seconds. 1 million seconds equals 11 and a half days.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So I'm not going to ask you to answer, but a billion seconds. So we now go from a millionaire to a billionaire. So
Yeah.
11 and a half days is a million seconds. 1 billion seconds is 11 and a half thousand days.
Wow.
Pretty big difference, huh?
Huge. Huge.
Now get this. So again, in what we've kind of been, I would say to some extent, myself included, we've been conditioned to hear, to think, believe, whatever you want to say. Okay, we went to millions, now we went to billions, now we just went to trillions. Again, it's used so casually.
Yeah.
So a million seconds is 11 and a half days. A billion seconds is 11 and a half thousand days. 1 trillion seconds, that further step, is 11 and a half billion days.
Crazy.
Now, I'd love to say I did this on my own, but I used my friend Grok to do the math on this. So I say that because I'm not responsible for it. Grok did it. But so now we're talking 1.4 trillion in the first 9 months. When you put that in perspective of money, where we were in the millions with our debts and deficits, several decades ago, then we went
Yeah.
into the billions for the last few decades. Now we are safely in the trillions. And when we hear about, it growing over a trillion in this case, I mean, shoot, we could be knocking on the door of $2 trillion.
Hmm.
It probably will be by year's end. That shows you just how big a number that is, and why, when people say it is insurmountable, they're not lying. I mean,
Right.
1 trillion seconds being 11 and a half billion days.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say we've got a little problem, Chris.
Well, yeah, and what you illustrated there is how big of a mountain we would have to climb, even if we got our self into order, got our budget, balanced. The problem is we're not even trying to tackle the problem. We're going the other direction.
Right.
We're continually spending. We're increasing our spending more than income we have coming in. And I always go to the typical household example. If you're spending more money every year than you make every year, your debt is only going to get bigger and bigger. And of course, when we're talking about the U.S. government. Now we're talking about trillions, whereas maybe the average household is talking about thousands or hundreds of thousands. So, and the biggest portion of all of this cash outlay that the U.S. government spends are on entitlement programs. And so that, that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those are the big ones. So that is only going to continue to increase unless our politicians make serious changes. And that means cuts to those benefits, which I don't think they're going to do, because if they do, the people on those benefits, guess what? They're not going to vote for you. So, the politicians want to keep everybody happy. They want to stay in office. They want to get those votes. So they're not going to cut where they should. We know the government has a horrible record when it comes to balancing budgets. So this just unfortunately isn't something that's going to change. I think it's going to continue to grow and grow. And I'm not sure what comes after trillions, but probably in my lifetime, I'm going to find out, because I'm going to be reading an article like this, and we're going to be that much further in the hole than we are now.
Well, I made a big mistake too. I'm sorry. I apologize for our listeners. It's not 11.5 billion. It's 11.5 million days. But still,
a lot of days.
That's a trillion.
I'm trying to get through the next week.
Think of that leap. You go from a billion seconds, which the math is pretty basic, but you go from a billion seconds to 11,500 days, 574. A trillion seconds is 11,500,000 days. So
crazy.
It's a lot, and I think it's so much that, again, it is not conceivable that we would ever be able to pay this debt back. So then the question becomes, what happens? How does eventually, when finally everything hits the fan, what does that look like? And nobody, well, maybe someone knows, but I don't know. I believe you know, but I do know that being financially diversified is the best thing you can do for when that day comes. And a staple in that, which we see central banks and governments doing right now, is getting gold and silver, tangible assets, into your portfolio. So to learn more about that, you can contact our office. You can call or text us at 1-800-289-2646, or you can visit us online at www.swissamerica.com. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for you that have tuned in today. We'd love to talk to you more in the future. So if you're not subscribed, please do so. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.